Hello, welcome to Painting with Jasmine Rempel. I am going to do today a Snow Family commission. This will be a Christmas card for a family from someone. And we have here the grandma and 6 grandchildren of varying ages. And this is a special card because somebody has asked for just the shadow of the grandfather to be here, a snow grandfather. He has passed away, but his shadow will be there as though he's with the family. And I just think that's a beautiful idea. So what I'm going to start doing is applying masking fluid onto the snow people. I'm rubbing a wet brush, round brush in Ivory soap. This is a number 4. And I'm going into my Windsor Newton masking fluid. And I'm going to get some on my brush and begin putting it on the snow people's bodies. This way, when I paint the background of this painting, I will have saved the bodies of the snow people. Now my horizon line is about here, so I will do the bases of the bodies, even though some of them won't. They'll be in white snow and I don't have to. You'll see what I mean once I start painting the background. I'm going to apply this masking fluid to each snowball. I put soap on my paintbrush before I use the masking fluid because the masking fluid can easily adhere to the bristles of the brush, and I want to save my brush. All right, so that is one snow person's body. I'm going to put this video on time lapse and do all of the other ones. I have masked out all of my snow figures and I've added toques to some of them. I'm going to now splatter paint this masking fluid so that it will be as though there's little snowflakes in the sky. Lots of snowflakes in the sky, or it might feel like stars. All right, that's done. Now it's time for this to dry. While it's drying, I'm going to think about the background colors I want to use for the sky. I do like to use Prussian blue as my main background color, and I like to use Kosher salt to sprinkle on it to create a snow effect. So I'm just going to clean the 2 brushes I used for the masking fluid, change my water, and mix up some paint. I will be back. All right, this masking fluid is dry, and now it's time to do the background. So I have here Princeton 1-inch wash brush, Velvet Touch, and I'm getting it wet. I'm going to get my watercolor card wet. I'm just pressing down around the edges of my white matte painter's tape to be sure the paint doesn't run into the borders. I'd like nice crisp white borders. And I'm just wetting my card. This is a Strathmore cold pressed 140-pound watercolor card. I like these. I order them from Amazon in sets of 50 or sets of 100, and they have been working well for me for creating watercolor cards. They come with envelopes. Right, I have watered all the way to the horizon line, and I see that I have a nice sheen on the paper. It is nice and wet without having puddles. And now I'm going to apply some wet paint to the background. I have a just straight Prussian blue, and I'll just begin to add that. Move it across the page. I'm using a number 8 round to apply my paint to the paper. And now I am going to add a mixture of permanent rose and Prussian blue, just for some variety in the sky. And back to straight Prussian blue. A bit of the pink. Adding some more of the blue to the top. And now I'm going to lift my paper, lift my card, and let the colors blend together a bit. Turning it to the other side. Good. I just want to add some more blue to the very top. It's dried out a bit up here. There we go. Okay. That works. And you can see I went right over the snow people. And if the masking fluid works well, then once this is dry and I rub the masking fluid off, it will be all white where the masking fluid was. I'm getting some of my kosher salt. This is a coarse salt, and I'm just going to sprinkle some randomly here and there. I'm going to do right now, I'm going to leave this to dry at its own speed. I'm not going to use my blow dryer. I'm just going to walk away for about an hour and let this dry, and then I'll come back and have a look. The masking fluid is covered. What I was meaning to say is that the paint is dry, and so I can rub off the masking fluid and the salt. So I have a rubber cement square here. Then I'll use this. I notice that there are some areas here where the white wasn't saved as far as it should have been, so I'll have to use some white gouache, and I'll probably apply some lifting techniques to fix this. The other thing is I will be making some scarves, and so this might be okay in the end. Anyways, I'll carry on with cleaning up the salt. All right, I like the salt effects for the most part. There are a couple of areas here where I don't really like what happened. I'll point this out. So there's one here, and there was quite a large grain of salt. I thought to lift it and I didn't, and I probably should have. And then one right here. However, when this is down and I look at this painting as a whole, this area might not end up bothering me. So we'll see. All right, so I'm going to begin to paint the snow figures, and to do that, what I end up doing is basically painting the shadows. Yet I have erased a little bit of my sketch, so I'm just going to quickly go in and re-sketch approximately where I had wanted these snowballs to be. And I generally know where the rest is, so that's good. Okay, now to create a shadow color, I'm going to use the same colors I've used here. So I'm going into my Prussian blue. I'm using Windsor Newton Watercolor paints, and I'm also using some of that permanent rose in the Prussian blue, and that gives, of course, a purpley look. And then I am going to add a little Payne's gray to that mixture. Prussian blue, permanent rose, and some Payne's gray. All right, now I have this mixture mixed up, and it's quite purple. Adding a little more Prussian blue. All right, so now I'm going to start by using a number 4 brush, number 4 round, and I'm just going to wet the center of the snowball with water. And once it's wet, I'm going to apply some of my shadow color. Just tap it into the side and let it bleed out into the paper. I'll do the same for this one here. My plan is to do one or two of these snow people and then to put the rest on time lapse. While this is drying and this is drying, I can't do the bottom or the top or else they will run together. So I can do another tummy. It's a good thing I mixed up it's a good thing that I mixed up a lot of the shadow color, because there's lots of snow people to do. I'm imagining that there's a source of light coming from the left side of the card. Of course, you can start on any part of the snow person. You could start shading in the head or the bottom. I chose the stomach areas today, but I don't always. It's kind of random why I picked it. There's no particular reason why I started here. This one is dry enough now that I can work on the bottom. And there we go. Again, just letting that bleed out into the snowball. And do the base of this one. Actually, I'm going to go up to the top and do the head. And to do that, I've picked a smaller brush. This is my number 2. Number 2 round. And I will wet the portion of the head that is not covered by the hat. I will leave the toque, the hat portion, dry. And touching some of that shadow color in as well. I've done so many of these snow people cards this year. Because people like them and they're asking for them and I enjoy making them. But today I was telling my husband that after this one, I think I need to paint something different for a little while. I think I'll move on to some trees, some winter tree paintings. We'll see. I'll see what takes my fancy. This is a hobby. I do sell some of my work, but I just basically enough to keep buying supplies, not to make a living by any means. All right, I'll do the bottom of this. And so when I paint for pleasure. I paint things that I love to paint, want to paint, enjoy painting. It's my way of relaxing at the end of a hard day of work, or at really any time. I started making videos because the way that I have learned to paint in acrylic and watercolors was through watching other tutorials. And I've appreciated those that show their techniques on a video for free, where I can watch and learn and try new things. It's really helped me grow. So I've decided that I want to give back. I want to help others grow too. Also, I've had people ask me, how do you do this or how do you do that? And I've done a few little workshops. So I thought that I can show some of the things I've been doing for people to enjoy as well. We are an art community. We learn from one another. I by no means consider myself an experienced watercolor painter. I simply do it for fun. I'll now work on the hat. I've been given some instructions for hats, and for the girl snow people, I need to do pink, purple, and minty green for the hats. So I will start with the permanent rose pink one. I'm using my number 2, and it's going all right. It has a nice tip, so I can get these fine details. Just touching in some colors. And I'll let that dry. I was thinking about doing the face, but I want to be sure that's completely dry first, so that my colors don't run when I pop in some eyes and a nose and a mouth. I'll carry on with my shading for now. I'm grabbing my number 4 again, just because it's a little bit larger and I can get this bottom snowball surface wet quicker with a larger brush. There we go. Nice. Okay, now I will do the face for this one. I'm using a 00 round brush. It is, let's see, Windsor Newton Watercolor. Very 00 meaning really, really small. This is dry enough that I can use the same pigment for the buttons, and this is Payne's Grey that I used for the eyes and the smile, and now for the buttons. Okay. Just feeling for dampness. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start in on the cast shadows. I'll use my kneadable eraser for some of these lines. And I will mix up a color for the cast shadow. So again, it will be the same colors that I have already through the whole painting. The Prussian blue, the permanent rose, and some Payne's Grey. And I will veer towards more blue than permanent rose. And I will use this for the shadow. So I like to do my shadows by applying the wet pigment on the dry paper and then pulling out this little pool of color. It's maybe a little bit too wet. I just cleaned off my brush on, or took some off my brush on a piece of paper towel. All right, just pulling that out. And now I'm rinsing off my brush completely, and it just has water in it. And I'll let that color just run out. There we go. Add a little touch here. Good. Okay. Now that the hat is dry, I'm grabbing my number 2 again, and I'm going to just put another layer of this pink, and I'm going to apply it on the right side to deepen up that color on the right side to give the impression of a shadow. Clean my brush and pull a wet brush across without pigment. Let it bleed out a bit. There. I'm lifting some off now. That didn't quite work the way I wanted it to. Now, a lot of it is light. Definitely looks pink. That's what I was aiming for, pink, but I'm going to go back in. There we go. Okay, and carry some of that same color with my number 2 round around the neck create a little scarf, pull down, sweet. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is put this on time lapse, because I'm going to do the same thing for all of these snow people. Maybe just before I do, I'll add a carrot nose. So I'm mixing cadmium yellow with cadmium red to create an orange. Really, any orange color will do that you have. And if you don't want to make a carrot nose, you could simply do another little dot with your Payne's gray. There's a pretty big carrot nose. I just lifted that. I didn't like how big it was. I'm going to apply a wet brush here, just wet with water. Put in my tissue again and lift it right out. I want to try that carrot nose again, and I will. First, I'm just going to use just erase some of these pencil lines. I think that I'll come back and do that nose. I'm going to put you on time lapse now and begin to shade in all these snow figures and work on all their hats. I'll do the exact same thing I did with these, but just different color. Well, now I'm going to add some shadowing into the pom-poms and into this portion of the hats, some cast shadowing underneath the snowballs where they touch each other, some cast shadowing in the snow, and some arms. So here I go. I'll start with the snowballs, the pom-poms. I'm just going to get each one wet, and then I'll tap in a little bit of the same shadow color I used for the snow men's bodies. Let it bleed out. Giving a little shadow. Great. And now I'm just going to run a wet brush along the rim of the hat, each hat. And put in my shadow color again, tap it in, let it bleed out. And just maybe blend it out a bit. Oops, I lifted it up, is what I did, because my brush was dry. There. That worked. Good. Okay. And now I've got a wet brush with some shadow pigment. Just going to take it under here, clean my brush, make it just simply wet, and pull that pigment out, let it bleed out a bit. Again, pigment in a brush, clean the brush, simply has water, and pull that out so that I don't have a hard line. This is a soft shadow in there. I'm going to carry that on in each snow person, and then I'm going to add these shadows, these cast shadows as well. I'll do that on time lapse for you. I have my cast shadows now. I have pretty much everything except their arms. To do their arms, I use my rigger brush, and I combine a mixture of burnt umber and Prussian blue. And I simply draw on cute little arms. I think they'll be holding hands. Okay. There we go. They're pretty cute. Rather spontaneous. And now I want to splatter paint some white gouache in the sky. I actually think I want to add a little star in the sky as well. So to add the star, I'm taking my number 2 round, and it's wet. And I'm going to place it here, and I'm just running my wet brush back and forth over this dry pigment. And what I've done is lifted off some of that pigment, almost like an eraser. And I'm going to run that over diagonally now. Same thing, just back and forth over the dry pigment and lifting. And what I achieve is just a faint line. There's a star. And now I'm going into my white gouache, and I'm adding some water to it, and I'm going to go right over those lines with my white gouache. When this white gouache dries, it dries very lightly. So I do a couple of layers. That looks nice. Gives a magical feeling to the night sky. I just remembered that I'm supposed to put in a grandfather figure. And he is no longer with the family, but the request was to have his shadow in there. So this is a very special shadow. So I'm going to do that now. His shadow is going to intermingle with theirs. Clean that off. It's just wet now. And pull out that pigment. One more shadow. Lift a little bit here. Bring that in. Big sigh. This is careful work. There we go. Intermingling it in. Lift just a little bit of that actually. Give the impression of a hat, another hat. The fullness of a form. Let the edges bleed out a little. Good. Strong shadow there. I think that'll work. Okay. I hope they like it. Now I'm going to go into my white gouache, get it wet, and I'm going to use it to add some extra snow by tapping. A little more. So fun. And now I want to go over that star again with the same white gouache mixture. It's actually not a mixture, it's just white gouache and it's wet. It's quite wet. Dry my brush off a little. Draw that star on. Put it on the grandfather's side. There. Beautiful. I think I'm done. I could run my brush along and add a little more color to the snow. Maybe I'll do that. quite wet. There we go. Simple as that. Now I'm going to sign this. And I'm going to lift the masking fluid, the masking tape, and after that, actually just before I do that, I really want to just add a little more shadowing right where their bodies touch the snow. Deepen the colors in there, shadow colors. That's good. Okay. I put this card on a board backing so that if I needed to move it up or down, I can. Sometimes I want to let my colors run together and move them while they're wet, and this, having it on a board helps to do that. There we go. Beautiful. This looks so nice. I really like it. I want to erase the markings, the pencil lines. Go in and do that. And I think I want to lighten up that star just a little more before I call it completely finished and send it off to its owner. Well, I guess to its purchaser, to the client. She will give it to the owner this Christmas. Thank you so much for joining me for this painting time together. I hope that you enjoyed the process, and happy painting.